Welcome to this week's version of 3B Farm. Stay tuned. So welcome back to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I'm on YouTube. I know some of you watch this on my private Facebook channel. But if you're on here and can find me on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. In any case, it's that time of the year. We're in full swing. I am stopping to take a breath every once in a while because I'm old and I can't keep up with everything that I've got going on. But there's way more to do than I can possibly do. And I'm working a lot of jobs off the farm because I'm trying to finance the grant that I got from the state to build my huge structure and fenced in area so I can get my fruit trees in the ground and that type of a thing going out there. I'm going to create a food forest or something like similar to that. There are a lot of people call these things different names. But you know, when you plant a single type of a crop, it just isn't beneficial for that crop. You're better off to mix a lot of different things in, you know, trees, then understory plants and perennials and stuff in the ground below that, and even use some annuals mixed in here and there. And what this does is it creates a situation in the soil where you're not totally depleting and ruining the soil the way farms have done for 100 years. What this does is create good microorganisms in the soil, and it creates a whole living system in the soil. And by doing that, you're actually mining different minerals and you know, nitrogen, everything that plants need, and adding carbon into the soil, and you know, doing all these good things that regenerates the soil. Now, the soil on this farm isn't bad, but it's nowhere near as good as it could be. So what I'm going to do is set up kind of a food forest with a lot of different types of plants to get the soil in better condition, along with adding soil amendments as well. But you know, I want to get it to the point where I'm not having to add fertilizers and stuff into the soil. You know, God, when He created the woods and various areas where, you know, He plants the plants, they provide all their own nutrients and create good soils in their root systems by their symbiotic relationship between all the different plants. And what I'm going to try to do with this huge fenced in areas that I'm creating is create that type of a situation, a man-made one, to mimic what God does in the real world. And hopefully thereby creating better soils and better growing conditions, and because of that you get better fruit and better yields on the plants that you have on your farm. So in any case, with all that being said, I need to jump into this and quit sitting here and yapping because I've got way more to do than I can possibly do. So let's get into the week. Now, one thing I really want to get control of is I have a bunch of Jerusalem artichokes out here, and I need to move all these. But when I came out to dig all these, I see where the rodents have been in here real big time. And I started just digging around, and I started finding some tubers, and I figured maybe they had eaten just about everything in here. But it seems like by digging through this, I think they've eaten most of the really big tubers. But I've got tons of medium and small tubers in here, and it's way more than I want to replant. So what I'm going to do is box a bunch of these up in small groups, and you know, here they are once I have them washed off. But I'm going to take these to the farmer's market and just go ahead and sell them in small batches so people can start them on their own farms. Another thing I ordered in was lemongrass, and I got all these starts here, so I'm going to go out and, you know, mix some more soil, and here they are sitting on the pile, and I'm just going to go ahead and pot all these up and start growing these on so I can get them rooted. And basically this is what I ended up with in gallon pots here, so I'm just going to put them somewhere somewhat protected and get them to root in before I go and sell them. Now I have a lot of irrigation issues. I showed you some pictures of some stuff that froze before, but this week I need to come back and just start replacing this valve on this one tank, and just a bunch of irrigation issues because we're getting not enough rain by any means. And there's several of these places where I need to put in these union joints because it just didn't drain well enough in the winter, and that's what caused all the PVC to break like this one did here. So I need to come back and replace all these, but also add in all these extra union joints so that I can drain the whole system better before winter of next year. I don't want to have to come through and redo this every year. And then as I do each section, I do turn on some water and start, checking the systems and just making sure everything, I get all the leaks and everything is good to go. Now, I drew this out here because I need to make some wooden platforms, so to speak, to put all my cell packs and stuff in for sale on the table. So I measured out the tables and figured out the racks that I want to set on the tables, and I'm just going to come through and start making a bunch of these. And I have this real wide 1x that was left over from the shelf that I made to start seeds in the basement, and it's just short pieces. So I'm going to cut these 2 inches wide by 30 inches long, which is the widths of the tables. And then for slats underneath these little things, I have a bunch of these fence boards, I have a bunch of used ones, and I have a few brand new ones. And I like to save and reuse stuff when I can. So I'm going to take a few of these and just cut these all to 32 inches wide and use those links to nail to those first pieces that I cut for the sides. And then I put a front and a back on these, and these are the trays that I can just keep loading to take to the market every week. That way I just have to slide them out of my truck and use them, and I don't have to use bread racks anymore. Now, one of the things I want to do this week is start cleaning up some of my messes. And I just have this big pile of stuff in the end of one of my hoop houses. I want to keep it here, but I want to sort it and get it managed. So I just had a couple of stands from old fish aquariums from years ago, and I brought them in here and put some wood tops on them and sorted it out. And back where I'm creating the new fenced-in area and the big building or structure that I'm going to build, I started buying 4x4s to start the fencing this week. And these are just going to be for corner and gate posts, basically. Now, I did order in a hori-hori, and basically this is just a knife for digging and planting perennials. I've always wanted one of those, and I didn't really have to have it, but it really is a nice tool if you're wanting to divide perennials. And I have several things I need to divide into 1 gallons this week. I mean, these are just lamb's ears here that were just in a bad place in the yard, so I'm going to cut them up. And here you see they've went into 9 3-gallon pots. And I don't know if these will sell or not, but I hated throwing them out, so now I have 9 of these if anybody would want one. And these are purple cone flowers here, and this is just from a clump that was in a garden area that I needed to move, so I dug a bunch of those up because these will sell. And these are Shasta daisies here. This was just a couple of small clumps, but I got quite a few 1 gallons out of those. And in the high tunnel, I need to start making more room for more plants in here. So, this greenhouse area, I need to start getting some more of the cool season stuff out of here. So I start moving this stuff out to the non-heated area down below. And to be able to get that in there, I actually had to lengthen this by another 2 hoops up at this end and enlarge this area to get more stuff in here. And then once all that's done, I can move stuff out of the basement out there, and then I have to mix up more soil to, pot up more of the stuff in the basement so I can get it coming on. Because every time I take stuff out, I pot up more. I'm trying to turn this space over as many times as I can to create as many plants in the very small area that I have. And here's just the first bunch of tomatoes coming out in the bread racks to move out there and start hardening them off. And they're going to be in there a week before the second market. And now that I've got more room downstairs, the next things I need to start are all my melons, all my pumpkins, and those types of crops that are coming on. So I go ahead and get all those started in these two seed flats here, and I have my next crop coming on. And then I keep these shelves full. Even though I keep moving out racks and racks and racks of plants, I'm constantly upgrading things from seed trays into, these small pots or cell packs or whatever. Most of the herbs and that type of thing are going into these small 3-inch pots. But, it's just a constant moving around of plants. When you don't have much of an area to grow in, and you're wanting to grow on the scale that I do, you just have to constantly keep circulating stuff through the system. And actually, I'm growing a lot this year, so I've been very useful with the system I have. Now, there's some things I'll need to direct sow out in the garden area. And here's a bunch of real sweet peas. I kind of grow these for the market, but I always eat them all. They never make it to the market. And basically I grow these in these 1/2 55-gallon containers. And you see I have a post in the middle, and then I bend some wire to make cages for them to grow up on. Now I want to have 2 of these barrels this year, and I want to extend the fence even higher. So I brought some more wire in here, and I'm just cutting some more pieces, and I raise those up so that now I have about 7 feet or so of wire above those planters so I can come through and plant all the peas. Now in some of those other containers, the same, I'm going to move down to this area, and I'm going to plant carrots in a couple of these. And the other thing I'm going to plant are radishes and get them coming on as well. But when I went to move the containers down here, I saw that, the carrots in one of these containers just didn't do that well last year. But they made it through the winter just fine, and I dug all these, and I'm going to take these to the market and sell. The cold through the winter just has these things so sweet and such really, really nice tasting carrots. So, I might experiment with that more through the winters. And then the radish and the carrots, I go ahead and seed 2 containers of these of each of those. And now I have that coming on for more crops for the spring, direct sown out in larger areas in the farm. Now one problem I do have to alleviate is all these real tall evergreens keep blowing in a wind. I had moved stuff in this area and not really had an area to tie them upright at the time. So the area along the fence, I need to start cutting back and working with all these 3-gallon plants, and these are just Weigelias, and I'm cutting them back really hard and fertilizing them and moving them out to another area so eventually I can tie things to the fence. Now one of the exciting things this week was gathering up stuff and getting stuff together to go to the farmer's market. And I'm not taking everything that I normally would take it when things warm up a little bit, but I'm trying to get a nice selection and let go to the market so people can see what I've got. And the first market of the year was just a rainy, miserable week. I did have a good market, and this is just basically a few pictures of what I had at the market. I had some of the cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli, but mostly it was landscape plants, perennials, and woody ornamentals. And I did fairly well. You can see how the fog has set in here, and it's really misty, rainy. It's really a miserable night, but really I did pretty well. So there you have this week's version of 3B Farm. There was several things I did do off camera, and there's several things I'm in midway of getting accomplished even as I'm ending this video this week. And my videos are tending to be a little over a week long, so maybe I should call them a week and a half on 3B Farm. I try to film a lot of what I do, but I don't get everything filmed, and by the time I have time to sit down and edit the films, because I've got so much going on, it's usually a little over a week. So, I hope you like this week and a half on 3B Farm. And like and subscribe to my channel. I would like for the channel to grow a little bit. I mean, I don't care to be huge, but I'd like to get the information out there because I'm sure there's somebody out there could look at what I do and maybe learn something or learn how not to do something. But in any case, thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. And tomorrow we start another week on 3B Farm.